Thank you for taking part in our interview.
Our project is about understanding first generation Bangladeshi in Rossendale.
Yeah.
We would like to learn about your memories and experience of Bangladeshi/Asian newcomers to Rossendale.
What is your name?
My name's Nick Subasic.
If you don't mind us asking, how old are you?
How old am I? I'm 61.
Where were you born?
I was born in Booth, which is just up the road from here. Yeah.
What town have you lived?
Well, I lived there first of all, and then we moved with my mum and dad, and we went living up Edgeside, Waterford. And then when I were about 8, we moved up into Haslingden, and I lived in Haslingden until I was about 17. And then my mum got a shop in Burnley, Stoneyholm. You heard of Stoneyholm, have you? Yeah, full of Asians it was. There was my mum and dad's shop, and everybody else were Asian. So they had this shop for about 3 years. I went away to college, come back, lived in Rossendale then, rest of my life. So I've always lived round about, very close to Rossendale.
Why did you choose to settle in Rossendale?
I think I chose Selling Rosa because that's where I was born. My sisters, I've got 2 sisters, they both lived here. My mum and dad, my grandma lived here, all my family lived here. My mum has no brothers and sisters, so I've got no aunties and uncles. My dad came from, like I said, Bosnia, so all his family are over in Bosnia. So it's I haven't got a massive big family, but the family that I've got live in Rossendale, and that's why I decided to stay here.
What was your favourite place in Rossendale?
My favourite place in Rossendale? Yeah, that's a difficult one, isn't it? My favourite place, I suppose it's like somewhere up on the hills or something like that. You know, somewhere where I used to like going up back of Allcar. If you go back of Allcar, you can go up to a place called Warswell, and you can walk round to where all those wind turbines are now. You can walk over to Old Bet. So somewhere up there, I would think. If somebody said, where would you like to be in Rossendale, I'd say probably up on the hills up there.
What jobs have you held?
Jobs? Well, I've been a teacher. I had a few jobs before I was a teacher. I worked at Holland's Pies for a bit. I did a job working on a tunnel myself down in London. The M25 that goes around London, it goes under the Thames at a couple of points, and they built the tunnel. And a firm in Booth worked on that, so I worked on that for a bit. Worked in a pub up in Haslingden that our friend Yassin and Salman have got now, when it was a pub. The Farmer's Glory. I worked there for quite a while, and then I decided I'd go to college and retrain and become a teacher. And I was a teacher, and I worked at Rossendale Youth Club as well as a youth worker.
Where did you work in Rossendale?
Well, I've worked all my life at Alder Grange. So Alder Grange, I started in Alder Grange in 1978, and I started at the youth club about 1980, something like that. Special needs.
Right.
So I started off. I went there covering a woman were going on maternity leave. She was having a baby, and they wanted somebody to come and cover her lessons. So I went up there, and she decided that she weren't going to come back. She was going to stay at home with the baby, and they said, "Would you like to stay?" So I did, and she was teaching kids with special needs. And in them days, back in the 70s, when Asian kids were coming into the country for the first time, because they couldn't speak English, instead of putting them into a normal class, they always put them in a special needs class. So they might have been really bright kids, really clever at maths, really clever at science, but because they couldn't speak English, they put them in a special needs. So I got a lot of Asian kids came through my department just simply because they couldn't speak English.
What are your early memories of first seeing or meeting Bangladeshi South Asian people?
My early memories in school as a teacher were meeting these kids coming to school, like I say, and they put them in the special needs department because they couldn't speak English. And if they put them in a class, let's say there were like 25 kids in a class, and there were 2 Asian pupils, and they couldn't speak English, the teacher had to spend so much time with them kids that they didn't want to know, so they put them in with me until they could learn English. And we used to have a like a service in Rossendale called the what do you call it? It was English as a second language, and certain teachers that was the job to teach kids who couldn't speak English. And my early recollections are these kids coming into Alder Grange when it was the old school, not being able to speak much English, and then some of them could, some of them were born here and they could speak very good English, and realising that the parents didn't come to parents' evening much, because they didn't sort of feel like they fit in with the general school situation, so they felt a bit intimidated and a bit shy coming to school. And I used to go around knocking on the doors. Terrible, isn't it? I should knock on the doors and say, "Hello, I'm Mr. Subasic," and this little Asian lady would open the door and she'd say, "Hello," and I'd say, "Hello, I'm Mr. Subasic from Alder Grange," and then she'd shout for her husband and say, "There's a bloke here, I don't know who he is. Can you come?" So Dad would come and say, "Hello," I'd say, "Oh, I'm Mr. Sabasic." And I'd say, your son comes to Alder Grange." "Oh, yeah. And then they'd invite you. They always used to invite me in. And they used to sit me down, and then they used to get the tea and the tea out. Oh, and it was always, I don't know if you drink it at all, but it was always tea in a teapot. It always had milk in it and sugar. So when they poured it, it came out of the teapot with white, with milk and sugar in it. And I didn't take sugar, but I didn't like telling them that I didn't like it. So I had to drink it, and pretend I liked it. And then all these kids would come running around on the table and they say, "Oh, would you like some samosas? Would you like some kebab?" And they bring the food out then. And it were good because I got to know the families. Because a lot of the families then, they didn't come into schools, like I say, they didn't come in like they do today.
Was there anything that interested or concerned you?
Well, that was the biggest concern, the fact that the parents didn't get involved in school. So when there were parents' evenings, I'd be sat there at parents' evening, and I'd have like 20 kids in my class. 6 of them would be Asians and 14 would be white kids. The white kids' parents would come into parents' evenings and you'd tell them, "Oh yeah, your son's doing well, your son's not doing well, your daughter's naughty, your daughter's so. But the Asian families didn't come, and that was the thing that worried me more than anything. So that's why I used to go to them. If they wouldn't come to me, I thought, well, I'll go to them, and that's what I did.
Have you had any Asian friends or colleagues? If so, is there any stories you would like to share?
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of Asian friends and Asian colleagues. I'm not sure that Mr. Haydar or Mr. Ali would like me to share some of their wild stories with you. I'll keep that between me and them, because I used to teach both. I used to teach Mr. Ali and I used to teach Mr. Haydar. So I remember them when they were pupils, and then they've come through, and now they're teachers at Alder Grange. So they were pupils of mine, and now they're colleagues of mine, which is really, really good. And then there's lads that were at the youth club. Your friend Ray Soiful, who used to go to Alder Grange. You didn't go to Alder Grange, did you?
Yeah.
No, he was lucky. He missed out. But there is one. I mean, it's not it's not earth shattering or anything. We used to have an Asian worker here, and his dad had a restaurant, and he started working here, and every summer we did like you do it now, I think you do like summer sort of activities where you go mountain biking or you go abseiling or whatever. And we set this program up this particular year, and we said, right, we're going to do mountain biking on Monday, then on the Thursday we're going to do some rock climbing, and then we're going to go to Alton Towers, and then we're going to do something in the club. We got it all planned out, and we said, right, well, you can do the rock climbing, you can do the mountain bike. So we've got staff all sorted out. And he was new, and he only just started, and we said, right, I'm not telling you his name, but we'll say, right, you can do the mountain biking. So he said, okay, yes. So I was doing the mountain biking, and he was doing it. And so he came that morning, and he had this white coloured suit on, a jacket and trousers, and nice shoes, nice shirt. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going mountain biking. I said, but you cannot go mountain biking like that. He said, can I not? I said, well, I've got no else on. So we went mountain biking, and we went to this forest, somewhere up in like Skipton, and we got out of the minibus, and all the kids got on his mountain bikes, and he got on a mountain bike with his white suit on and his jacket, and he's riding through this forest, and it's filthy, sludge everywhere, and you know it's like a mountain bike. It like splashes up on you because the people in front of you. And we got to the end of the day, and it was terrible. His white suit, it was just black with sludge, and I thought, blinking out. And every time I think of him now, I think of him in this white suit, riding through the Grisdale Forest, I think it was, on his mountain bike.
Was it safe or was it?
No, no.
Because that's near Lake District, isn't it?
Pardon?
Near Lake District. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is up that way. Yeah.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Tough place though.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, he was a grand lad. He was a really good worker. He was really committed, and he liked his job. But yeah, that was funny.
Was communication a barrier among Asian or Bangladeshi people?
It was, yeah. In the early days, it was because, like I say, a lot of the parents couldn't speak English and didn't come into school. The kids themselves, it was a barrier in the early days because the kids that were coming to Alder Grange in the 70s and early 80s, some of them didn't speak English. But as time's gone on, it's not been as much as a problem because now we've got second and third generation Asian heritage young people coming to school, so communication's okay. In the early days, it was a problem, yeah.
Do you live near any Bangladeshi families?
Yeah, I live near some. I mean, there's a couple that live just behind me. I taught her as well, and it's a bit embarrassing because every time she puts her bin out, she always puts the wrong bin out. When it's a green bin, she puts the blue bin out, and when it's a blue bin, she puts the green one out. And I went to her house a few weeks ago, and I knocked on the door, and she said, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Subasic." I said, "You put the wrong bin out." And she must be about 30, she must be 30-year-old, and she talked to me like she were back at school. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Subasic." I said, "No, I'm not here to tell you off or anything." He said, they won't take your bin because it's green and it's blue day." "Oh, right, Mrs. Subasic." Yeah, and there's quite a few live around where I live.
Do you feel there has been enough integration in Rossendale?
Has there been enough integration in Rossendale? Well, possibly not enough. I mean, there's been a lot of integration, but it's like my dad. When my dad came over here, all his friends that lived in Rossendale lived close together. So when we lived in Haslingden, we lived on Blackburn Road, and there were 4 families who lived just behind us, who were from Yugoslavia, from Bosnia, and they kept close together because they supported each other and they helped each other, and they had the same interests because they came from the same place. There has been, I feel there has been a lot of integration, but whether you'll ever get full integration or not, I don't know.
As a former teacher working with young people, are there any interesting stories you want to share?
Former pupils, I've got lots of stories. I can remember having him and his brother. Do you know the PLC? You know the PLC? Do you know the PLC in Alder Grange? We know where the library is.
Yeah.
You know that little room next to it, the PLC. Do you know that one? We used to have meetings in there with parents, and I can remember one day we had a meeting with Soifel's mum and dad, and I think his brother had been the naughty one rather than Soifel, and so we got the parents in, and his parents were really upset, because they'd been naughty, and these two they were near to tears, "Oh, we won't do it again, we won't do it again," and his mum I think his mum was the one that was the fierce one. She was the one that would give him a good hiding when they got out to that room. Yeah, and there's lots of funny stories. I remember we used to play 5-a-side. The teachers used to play against the students, and they always used to put me in the goal because I'm bigger and I've got more area. They used to say, the teachers would say, "Oh, Nick, you go in the goals." So they put me in the goals, and we had this one lad, and he's quite a wealthy lad now. He's got a restaurant in Chester. You might know who I'm talking about. New lads might know who I'm talking about. He were a bit of a wide guy, you know, he thought he were like Ronaldo, and I remember he scored a goal. I'll let it through, you know. He scored this goal, and he starts running around the sports hall, going. Rrr, rrr. So I saw black, you know. I thought, oh my goodness me, and I thought, well, I'll get him back now, you know, get him back. So they were playing, and they were going to shoot again. So I just put my foot out, and he went head over heels, and he banged right up. And the referee said, free kick, penalty. I said, no, didn't touch him. And this lad were really annoyed, you know, really mad. But we've gone on all right, you know, we had a good laugh about it afterwards. He scored the penalty. But I see him now. Yeah, there's lots of tales that you can tell about kids and staff as well.
Any words of advice for the next generation of young people?
I think it's just, you know, to do your best and to be respectful towards other people. I found that one of the biggest changes I've seen over time is when I first started teaching. I was a lot younger then as well, and it was different when you're younger. But when I first started teaching at Alder Grange and the Asian heritage kids came into school, they were so keen. They worked so hard. I can remember people, you know, I can name them. The first of the family, you know, there might have been like 3 or 4 brothers and 2 sisters, but the eldest one of that family came to Alder Grange, and they worked so hard and gave so many sacrifices. And then the rest of the family came, and you saw what the first person had done with the sacrifices and working so hard. The others reaped the benefit because they became doctors and solicitors and barristers, you know, they got really good jobs. And it were only because the ones before them had worked really hard. You know, they'd left school, they got jobs, and they weren't good jobs, you know, but they were jobs so they could pay for the next, the brother or the sister coming up to go on to university, and they sacrificed quite a lot. Mr. Ali's brother were one of them, but he's come out all right now because he has a smashing takeaway. There was Dr. Manon, this family. You know, there's lots of them that where they work really hard, and I've noticed that over the years, there's been a change. Sadly, that the Asian heritage kids have not been as keen and as committed and worked as hard as the first lot were when they came. When I first started teaching back in the 70s, and I think it's just the way of the world because you know you're the 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation, and the people that are up at Alder Grange now, I remember the parents who worked really hard, and even sometimes their parents who worked even harder. And I think that's the sort of mentality that my dad had as well. My dad wanted me to do well because he'd come from a background that was poor. They hadn't got much. When he came over here, he had nothing. He had no money, no house, no job, no nothing. And he started off from the bottom, built up, got himself a job, got himself my mother, married my mother, had some kids, got himself a house, and then you know he got a better house, got some more money, and he appreciated it. And he wanted me to work hard, and I haven't got any kids. But if I'd have had any kids, I think they'd have probably taken things for a bit more for granted, and not as been as committed as maybe I've been and my dad's been. And that's the one thing that sticks in my mind, perhaps, as time's gone on, that the commitment. But it's like that with the indigenous, the white kids. You know, they take things for granted. But the thing that stood out for me was the Asian heritage kids. Originally, you know, it was really work hard, do my best, get myself a good job, and you know, hopefully you lads will be the same. If I go back to my father then, my father came here in 1950-ish, something like that. And the reason my father came here was because it was work basically. He came from Bosnia. You've heard of Bosnia, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because of the Bosnian conflicts, the Bosnian conflicts back in the 90s. But going back even further to the Second World War, when Britain were at war with Germany and France were on our side and the Americans were on our side and so on and so forth. My dad lived over in what was Bosnia then. Bosnia was on our side, and after the war, the Russians went into that part of the world and they took over, and that country became a communist country. So that country, which was called Yugoslavia, became a communist country. My dad didn't like being a communist, so he wanted to get away. So they came out, and all his friends came out to the country. And they fled, a bit like the Syrians are doing today.
Yeah.
You know, they're like refugees. So they travelled across Europe. They travelled through Italy first of all, then through Germany, France, whatever way they could, on foot, in coaches, on trains, cadging lifts, until they got to Britain, and they landed on the south coast of Britain. And then they made their way up to Scotland first of all. And the reason they went to Scotland was because of the work was up there. There were a lot of heavy industry people, like making tunnels for trains and roads, so they were digging under the ground, coal mines and all that sort of stuff. So my father went working up there, and then the company that he worked for up in Scotland had this job in Rossendale, and they built this water pipe, if you will. It's like a big tunnel, and it goes from the Lake District, and it comes through Rossendale, and it goes down by the railway station, and underneath the ground there's this big tunnel which is transporting water from the Lake District to Manchester for the population of Manchester, because it's a big town. So these people came here because there were a lot of work here, and it was good money, and they set up a camp up on Upbury Road, just past Hoopers. If you carry on up past Hoopers, it's a place called Andrew Avenue now. So on there was this camp where all these European people sort of lived together, and they worked on this tunnel. And then some of them moved out different towns. My dad met my mum and I were born, and so my dad stayed here. And they stayed here basically because of work, because there were coal mines here. And a lot of these guys worked in the coal mines because nobody else wanted to work in the coal mines. But these guys would work there because they were down deep in the underground, wet, cold, dirty, horrible. So they did these jobs. And they stayed here. And I made a life here. And that's how he sort of progressed and stayed here. And then moving on to when I were at school, the first sort of encounter that I had with any Asian people were, we had one boy came to my school as a pupil. It was a totally white school. It's St James's in Haslingden. Now if you go to St James's in Haslingden now, it's like 90% Asian. There's not that many white kids there, but when I was there, they were all white, one Asian lad, and it were really, really strange. Everybody thought, who's this guy? You know, he's got like this funny coloured skin, and where's he come from? And everybody wanted to sort of be his friend and find out who he was and that, you know, and talk to him. And he did reasonably okay. And then my mum at that time, she worked in a factory that made bedspreads, and these bedspreads, you put them on top of your bed and they're like the candle wick. And in the sort of 60s, there used to be a really, everybody wanted bedspreads. Instead of having, like we have duvets now on our bed and we have quilts over the top and whatever, everybody wanted these bedspreads. And she worked in this place sewing them, and they had like horrible jobs there. They were like the dye house where this material was chucked into these big vats, and they used to dye the stuff different colours. And in there they were all Bangladeshi blokes. The white guys didn't want to do this job because it stunk horrible, and it were hot and wet and awful, humid. But there were these and that again was then, that was the first time I really came into a big contact with like Asian adults.
Do you
Because
remember what the factory was called?
it was called the Vine.
Right.
There was two. There was the Vine Fabrics, which was down Station Road in Haslingden, and there was another one called Ivanovic, and it was in fact the guy was a Yugoslavian guy, and he opened a factory up in top of Haslingden. So there were two factories, the Vine and the Ivanovic's. I mean, one worked there, but there were loads of Asian guys working in the horrible jobs they were, jobs that nobody else wanted to do. So that's me really, and then I suppose we come on to then your question.